Have you ever wondered why at certain moments in life you stumble upon a video, a sentence, a sensation, and suddenly you know for sure that you are about to change? Not the kind of "I will try harder," but a quiet yet fierce feeling that life is preparing to move you into another chapter. No one tells you that. There is no clear sign, but you know, as if an invisible force is shifting everything around you. The interesting thing is most people overlook that moment. They think it is just a fleeting emotion. But in Machiavelli's philosophy, those moments are the intersection between the unconscious and your real life, the place where the comeback journey always begins in silence. In today's video, we will dive straight into the real reason why you are seeing this message at this exact moment. Because according to Machiavelli, the unconscious never sends signals randomly. When someone lands on a video like this, it is often a marker of a quiet shift signaling that you are stepping into the biggest comeback of your life. Not the kind of comeback you hope will arrive, but the kind that has already begun in the deeper layers you have not seen yet. Are you ready to come back in the exact moment you are watching this video? Number 1. The awakening of the unconscious. You are seeing this video not by accident. Have you ever experienced a vague but powerful feeling that your life is about to change? A kind of intuition without clear evidence, yet heavy with the sense that some door is quietly opening. You don't know what is coming, you don't know where to start, but you feel certain you are standing at a new threshold. That is exactly how a comeback begins. Not with loud signs, not with absolute certainty, but with a subtle vibration, like a knock from within that makes you turn your head ever so slightly. Machiavelli called this the whisper of the self, the murmur of your true being. A viewer once shared with the channel that after many years of working a stable office job to the point she believed her life would always remain that way, something changed. One afternoon, sitting tired in front of her screen, she suddenly felt compelled to replay an old video she had watched long ago. A video about the comeback journey of someone who had once failed miserably. She didn't understand why she watched it that day, why her heart beat faster when she heard those lines. A few weeks later, she signed up for a course she had postponed for 2 years. 6 months later, she quit her job and started building her own project. When I asked what made you change so quickly, she just smiled and said, "I'm not sure. I just know there was something that day that made me see life through a different lens. That is synchronicity." When the unconscious brings you to the exact place you need to be at the exact moment you need it, even before you understand why, you are watching this video for that same reason. Not because YouTube recommended it randomly, not because you clicked out of curiosity, but because your unconscious has begun awakening a part of you that you once abandoned. Have you ever felt that you have outgrown your current life? Do things that once felt fine now feel too tight? Those conversations that once connected you with others now feel out of rhythm? Not because you are becoming strange, but because you are entering what Machiavelli called the cycle of conscious expansion, where the true self begins wanting to grow beyond old limits. Comeback in the deepest sense of Machiavellian psychology is not achieving something big, but the process of returning to yourself after being lost for too long. A person stepping into their comeback doesn't need anyone to validate it. They simply feel deeply that something is changing. Just as spring arrives, a tree doesn't need to ask anyone whether it should sprout. It simply does because that is its nature, and so do you. This rising does not wait for you to be ready. It comes because its time has arrived. Think of the image of a river. Some parts flow gently, others rush violently, swirling and crashing against rocks. But even when the surface looks chaotic, the current underneath knows exactly where it's going. Your life right now may resemble that turbulent section, outwardly unstable, but inwardly guided by a secret order moving you towards something greater. Synchronicity is the river's way of saying, "Pay attention, something important is happening." If you notice, in recent weeks, you may have felt small but strange shifts. You get bored easily by things that once excited you. Your intuition becomes clearer about what you should release. You become more sensitive to others' energy. And even though you feel tired, you also sense a new source of energy forming quietly. This is not random. This is the phase where life begins calling you home. Just as Machiavelli wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." The true self will call you, sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through a vague urge, sometimes through a video that appears exactly when it should, and you are in that moment now. You are here because your soul has begun shifting, even if your mind has not caught up. You are here because something greater is waiting for you to step into it. You are here because your comeback is no longer ahead. It is opening its door right now, and once you have felt that subtle calling from the deepest part of your soul, the comeback journey takes you to its second phase, the phase many mistake as a sign of being lost, but is actually the gateway to your most powerful transformation. Number 2, the transition phase, when the old dissolves and the new hasn't appeared. This is the strange period when you no longer belong to your old life, but the new one has not yet emerged. This phase always arrives quietly. You look around and realize you no longer resonate with things that once felt familiar, a stable job that now suffocates you, familiar conversations that feel heavy, passions that once warmed you now cold as ash. You no longer feel inspired, but you also don't want to go back to anything from before. You stand between two shores, one collapsed, the other not yet formed. This in-between moment terrifies people the most because it has no map to follow, no guaranteed promise, no light at the end of the tunnel. But Machiavelli called this the dark night of the soul, not because of its gloom, but because it is precisely here that old structures begin dissolving so the new can be born. Machiavelli once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And this transition is exactly that soul pain, a shapeless ache that signals you are preparing to enter a deeper awakening. I once knew a woman who suddenly felt heavy and exhausted every morning, as if dragging her body across the day. Her job wasn't bad, her income fine, but something inside her had fallen out of rhythm. She tried forcing herself to be grateful, to persist, to maintain what was stable, but the more she forced, the emptier she felt. One day during a long, draining meeting, she realized she couldn't hear anything anymore, not because she lost focus, but because her heart no longer belonged there. A few months later, she quit, shocking everyone around her. "I don't know what's coming," she said. "I only know I cannot stay in the old anymore." Decisions like that rarely come from logic. They arise from a deep shift the unconscious has prepared long before. The transition moment always comes with a sense of losing direction. You are no longer sure of anything, and that uncertainty makes you feel as if standing on soft ground. But strangely, that very ambiguity is the sign you are moving in the right direction. Because if you already knew exactly where you were going, that wouldn't be transformation. It would just be repetition. This phase is like walking through fog. You can't see the path, but each step you take reveals a part of the road that did not exist before. This image reminds me of the story of an old Zen master in Japan. A disciple came to complain that everything in his life had fallen into chaos, unstable work, distant friends, broken routines. The master handed him a cup full of water and said, "Pour more." The disciple answered, "I can't, master. The cup is full." The master smiled, "So are you." He gently poured the water out and said, "Only when empty can you make space for the new to enter." That is the most delicate metaphor for the transition phase. Machiavelli described the disorder is not a sign of failure, but life clearing out what no longer fits so the self can step in. Machiavelli believed that every psychological rebirth must go through dissolution. The old ego made of beliefs, roles, expectations, habits must collapse for the true self to emerge. You feel lost not because you are off track, but because you are becoming too big for your old life and the old can no longer hold you. Imagine a seedling breaking through hard soil. From the outside, everything looks like destruction. The earth splits, dirt scatters, stones shift, but underneath is new life rising quietly. Your life is the same. When things feel unstable, remember the ground only cracks when something new wants to be born. And if right now you feel tired, empty, no longer belonging to anything familiar, do not panic. You are simply growing. And growth, according to Machiavelli, always begins with dissolution. This is not a sign of ending, but an invitation into a new chapter of your being. Trust this process even if you see nothing clearly. Because where you stand right now is the threshold of your comeback. And a real comeback only begins when the old can no longer hold you. If you feel you are standing in the transition phase where the old has loosened but the new has no form yet, leave one word in the comments. One word to mark that you have seen yourself in this journey, that you know life is quietly opening a new door. You may choose a word that mirrors your inner state, for example, awakening, when you feel you are waking from a chapter too small. Becoming, when you know you are growing into something you have never been before. Or transition, when you are standing between two shores while your soul whispers keep going. Just one word, but sometimes one word is enough to tell the universe you are ready. Number 3, when the shadow rises to free you. If the transition phase makes you feel you are no longer aligned with the old, but have not fully stepped into the new, then the next phase is when the things you once tried to hide, suppress, or forget suddenly resurface without warning. This is when the inner shadow begins to move. Many mistake this as regression, but in truth, this is the most crucial shift Machiavelli called the rising of the shadow, not to destroy you but to free you. The shadow does not come as an enemy, it comes as a mirror forcing you to face the parts you have ignored for years, old fears, intense emotions without explanation, quiet resistance or anger that doesn't belong to the present. When the shadow rises, you feel pulled into overwhelming emotions. But in truth, it is a sign you have gone far enough that the deepest part of the unconscious wants to be healed. Machiavelli once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the moment when the darkness wants to be seen, so it no longer has to scream in silence." A friend of mine said that after leaving a long-term relationship, she became overly sensitive. If a friend replied late, she panicked. If someone changed plans last minute, she felt abandoned. A careless comment hurt her deeply. She didn't understand why she reacted so strongly. During therapy, she realized those feelings didn't come from the present at all. They were echoes from childhood, moments of being left alone, cold remarks from adults, times she had to shrink herself not to be a burden. When she left the familiarity of a relationship, the old protective layer disappeared and the shadow resurfaced with all the buried memories, and when she dared to face them, something strange happened. The fear of abandonment no longer controlled her, not because it vanished, but because it had finally been seen. Raw feelings became raw truth, and as Machiavelli said, darkness only needs to be acknowledged to lose its power. Neuroscience supports this clearly. When you experience intense emotions like fear, sadness, or anger, the brain, especially the amygdala, activates survival mode, making your heart race, your body tense, and your reactions instinctive. But when you stop avoiding and simply observe the emotion, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for clarity and conscious thinking, begins calming the amygdala, helping your body regulate. This means by simply facing an emotion, you help your nervous system release the energy that has been stuck for years. Machiavelli said, "The shadow is the first door leading to your comeback because you cannot become a stronger version of yourself if you are still bound by unprocessed emotions. The shadow teaches you to face what you don't want to see, to touch what you once ran from, to embrace what once filled you with shame, and only when you do that can the stuck energy be released, creating inner space for the new version of you to enter." Imagine a long abandoned dark room. The darkness itself is not the problem. The problem is that you have never stepped inside. Each time you turn on a small light, you see objects that once scared you, but in truth they are just old items you no longer need. When you gather and clear them out, the room becomes spacious, clean, and bright, and then you realize the room was always beautiful. It just needed to be illuminated. The shadow is the same. It is a room that must be entered not to fear, but to be free. If you are experiencing intense emotions, overreactions, emptiness, sudden anger, or old memories resurfacing, do not panic. You are not going backwards. You are entering the most important phase of your comeback. The shadow does not destroy you, it clears the path. It reveals what has been holding you back, so you won't carry it into the next chapter, and something strange will happen. When you dare to face what once terrified you, it loses power. When you accept what once made you ashamed, it becomes wisdom. When you allow emotions to rise without judgment, they become life force. That is why after every dark night of the soul, the light is always deeper and steadier than before. And that is the sign you are closer than ever to the comeback of your life. Number 4, the restructuring of inner power. When you react differently and become someone new, Machiavelli believed that after the shadow is acknowledged, the psychological system naturally enters a reorganization phase. Old reactions loosen, old habits lose their grip, and a person begins acting differently, almost as if becoming someone new. This is not pretending to be mature, but the outcome of a newfound stability in the ego-self axis where the ego no longer dominates and the self leads the way. Machiavelli once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And the moment the shadow is seen is the moment you begin breaking free from unconscious patterns that once directed your life. You will notice this first in the way you react. In the past, a careless remark could break you, a sudden situation could rattle you, someone's silence could panic you, but now you find yourself pausing. You no longer react on impulse, you observe before you respond. You are no longer pulled into drama, no longer letting old wounds dictate your behavior. This is not you trying to be strong. It is your nervous system shifting from instinctive reaction to conscious response. The clearest sign of inner restructuring. I once knew a young woman named Lisa who spent years in unstable relationships. Whenever someone raised their voice, she immediately went defensive. Whenever conflict arose, she either walked away or cried. But after a period of therapy and facing her shadow, she said, "I don't react as fast anymore. I pause, breathe, and choose differently." Lisa no longer argued to protect her ego, no longer collapsed under familiar triggers. The change felt gentle, like a soft touch, yet it shifted her life onto an entirely different trajectory. The notable thing is she wasn't trying to change. She was simply operating from a deeper layer of maturity she never knew she had. This is like a river in spring. Ice melts not because the river tries, but because the temperature has changed. Humans are the same. When inner power restructures, old reactions melt, not through forced effort, but because you have risen to a different frequency. The small ego no longer has enough weight to pull you back into the past. A well-known story illustrating this stage is Michelle Obama's journey. In her memoir, Becoming, she shared how for a long time she lived according to others' expectations to be perfect, to be strong, to satisfy every role. Every pressure activated familiar defensive reactions. But the deeper she went into self-awareness, the more she realized those reactions stemmed from an ego shaped by fear, not from her true self. She said the turning point did not come from a grand event, but from the moment she began reacting differently, saying no to what was misaligned, leaving exhausting circles, setting boundaries clearly, and accepting she could not please everyone. That was the silent but powerful shift of inner restructuring, the foundation of the solid version of her that the world sees today. In Machiavelli's process, this is the stage when the persona, the social mask, begins to fade. You no longer react to maintain an image, no longer act to please, no longer live to be praised or validated. Instead, you begin choosing from the center of the self where clarity, integrity, and peace reside. Your decisions become sharper not because you know more, but because you are standing in the right place inside yourself. Inner restructuring doesn't appear with fireworks, it arrives in small details. The way you no longer text impulsively, the way you know when to walk away, the way you say no without guilt, the way you hold silence when silence is self-respect, the way you choose peace over winning. These small things create something big. You begin living like the person life has been preparing for a comeback, steady, bright, and not easily shaken, and then you realize you are not becoming someone new. You are returning to yourself. The version you are growing into has always existed, just waiting for the old ego to step aside so the true self could emerge. And if you feel you are stepping into the phase of reacting differently, more gently, more consciously, and more truthfully to your own self, hit like on this video. Not only to support the channel, but as a way of affirming to yourself that the restructuring of your inner power is truly happening. A gentle touch, but who knows, maybe it's the sign that you are indeed moving in the right direction. Number 5, withdrawal from the crowd, the ceremonial silence. And when your inner power begins to restructure, when you notice that you react differently, more calmly, more clearly, something very special will happen. You begin withdrawing from the noise around you, not because you dislike anyone or because you want to isolate yourself, but because your mind is entering a more delicate phase, the phase Machiavelli called withdrawal, a ceremonial step backward in the individuation process. This is when your energy is pulled inward in preparation for a greater surge. You will notice this in the smallest details. You feel less inclined to talk, less inclined to explain, less inclined to show up. Conversations that once excited you now feel heavy. People who once matched your energy now seem distant, not because you are becoming negative, but because your inner frequency is changing naturally, creating the need for silence. And strangely, this withdrawal does not feel lonely. It feels preparatory, as if something inside you is quietly being rearranged. In a Machiavellian therapy session, a young woman shared that after a major upheaval in her life, she suddenly no longer wanted to attend the social gatherings she once loved. Her friends thought she had become cold. But in truth, something else was happening inside her. She woke each morning with the desire to sit in silence, listen to gentle music, read, and write out her emotions. Instead of fearing that silence, she stepped into it. A while later, she told me, "I feel like I'm storing energy, not to hide from anyone, but to return as a stronger version of myself." And indeed, months later, she started her own project, something she never had the courage to begin before. That withdrawal was not a retreat, it was the ignition of her comeback. Withdrawal is like the moment the ocean becomes still before the tide rises. From the outside, you appear less interactive, less connected. But that is because your energy is being pulled down into deeper layers. You are no longer scattered by meaningless conversations, by the need to please, by the urge to be the agreeable person in everyone's eyes. You begin prioritizing yourself not out of selfishness, but because your soul is entering a regeneration phase. You may not notice it, but this stepping back is what allows you to move farther than anyone expects. One of the most beautiful examples of this phase comes from Machiavelli himself. Few people know that after parting ways with Freud, a shock both professionally and psychologically, Machiavelli went through a period of near-total withdrawal from the world. He left teaching, stopped writing, reduced social interactions, and spent years walking around Lake Zurich, carving figures, recording images that emerged from the unconscious, and conversing with his own mind. Many at that time thought he had gone mad, but it was precisely in that misunderstood period that Machiavelli entered what he later called the confrontation with the unconscious. And from that seemingly meaningless withdrawal, Machiavelli produced the greatest works of his life, including the Red Book, the foundation of all Machiavellian theory that followed. Machiavelli disappeared from the world only to return as one of the most influential minds of the 20th century. That is the essence of ceremonial withdrawal, a moment when the world thinks you are pausing, but in truth you are being prepared for your greatest leap forward. Because inner power cannot be regenerated in noise. It can only be rebuilt in silence. As you enter this phase, you will notice that silence becomes something you cherish. You savor quiet evenings alone, not because you want to avoid others, but because you want to hear your own inner voice more clearly. You gradually stop caring about what people think of you or what they expect from you. You no longer feel the need to reply quickly, show up on time, or explain yourself. That withdrawal is the beginning of freedom. Freedom from the invisible control of the crowd, from the rhythm of life you once thought you had to follow. If you feel yourself quieting down, know that it is not a sign of diminishing, it is a sign of maturing. When the soul grows, it needs space, it needs quiet, and that silence is the ritual before a new self is born. You are not leaving the world, you are only leaving behind what no longer belongs to you. And then one day, you will notice something magical. When the silence becomes deep enough, you begin to hear the calling of your comeback. Number 6, the signals of a comeback. The universe begins responding with precision. There will be a very strange moment when you have gone through the phase of withdrawing from the crowd, when your inner power has been regenerated in stillness and your old reactions fall away like a layer of skin that no longer fits. And that is the moment the universe begins responding to you, not with vague signs, but with a level of precision that startles you. Machiavelli called this synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence where the outer world reflects the exact frequency inside you. Machiavelli once said, "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see," and when synchronicities grow more frequent, it is always the first signal that you are stepping into the comeback phase of your life. The interesting thing is that synchronicity never appears during chaotic or unstable phases. It only emerges when you begin living as your true self, when you no longer strain to control everything, when your mind is no longer pulled by fear, and when your energy becomes clearer. External events begin to align with your inner rhythm. Opportunities you long searched for suddenly find you. The right people walk into your life without you calling them. Messages appear exactly when you need them, as if someone read your thoughts beforehand. In personal life, synchronicity shows up in very ordinary ways. I once knew a girl named Mina. After a year of withdrawing from toxic relationships, focusing on healing and returning to herself, one afternoon, she suddenly thought of a close friend she had lost contact with for 5 years. She didn't reach out. She simply thought of her with gratitude. 2 hours later, that friend unexpectedly messaged, "I don't know why, but I've been thinking about you all day. Are you okay?" They both said they thought of each other precisely at a time when their lives were turning a new page. For Mina, that coincidence wasn't magic. It was confirmation that when the inside changes, the outside shifts as well. Life is not a journey you force with effort, but a journey where you adjust your energy to become someone who is guided. Machiavelli believed that when the ego no longer clings, when the self takes the lead, external events begin connecting through an invisible logic, the logic of the soul. In Greek mythology, there is the story of Odysseus, the hero who spent 10 years lost after leaving the battlefield of Troy. Throughout his journey, he fought the sea, fought monsters, fought fate, and each time he did, the sea threw him into new trials. But the moment he stopped resisting and began listening to the signs from Athena, dreams, intuitions, changes in wind, his journey suddenly became strangely smooth. The Greeks called this chiros, the right moment when the universe opens the door for the one who is ready. Just like Machiavelli's synchronicity, it says that life does not open when you force it, but when you align with your inner order. And here is the beautiful part. Synchronicity doesn't only show up in big things, it begins with very small ones. A timely sentence that wakes you up. A book you randomly pick up opening to the exact page you need. A stranger saying exactly what you were thinking. Or an opportunity arriving right after you swore you wouldn't give up. These seemingly random pieces form a single picture. You are being guided. You will know you have entered the comeback phase when coincidences start lining up in front of you. When you think of something, it immediately appears. When you meet the right person at the right time without planning. When an opportunity arrives perfectly aligned with the inner growth you just attained. When life is no longer a chaotic sequence you must try to control, but a flow you begin to trust. And here is the most important thing. Synchronicity appears only when your inner power has become steady enough. It doesn't arrive to save you, but to confirm that you are on the right path. It is the whisper of the universe, keep going, you're close. If you are seeing small signs, coincidences, unexpected messages, doors opening at the right time, do not dismiss them. They are not illusions of hope. They are the voice of the soul, the voice of the universe, the voice of what Machiavelli called the return of the self, the return of the inner order. And if you are watching this right now, know that this too is a form of synchronicity, not accidental, not lucky coincidence, but a reminder that your comeback is closer than you think. And if you have ever experienced a moment of synchronicity, a timely meeting, a strange message, a door opening exactly when you were ready, share your story in the comments. Sometimes your story is the sign someone else has been waiting for to keep believing in their journey. Number 7, the tipping point. Comeback is not coming. It is happening right now. But have you ever wondered what if your comeback is not something you are waiting for but something that began long ago and you are only realizing it now? Many people think comeback arrives with some grand sign, a striking opportunity, a destined encounter, a remarkable achievement. But Machiavelli said the deepest transformations always happen in silence where no one sees, not even you, before erupting into a visible turning point. Machiavelli once said, what you resist not only persists but grows in size, and when you stop resisting, stop clinging to the old, something inside you begins moving in a new way. The true comeback phase is not when your life changes, but when your inner identity changes. You may not see anything externally yet, but if deep inside you no longer live from fear, no longer repeat old reactions, no longer allow small things to derail you, that is when the comeback has already crossed the threshold. Not next week, not soon, but in the very moment you breathe. In a group session, I once heard the story of a woman who quietly changed her life without anyone noticing. After years of living on an exhausting schedule and in energy-draining relationships, she suddenly felt she no longer wanted to live that way. There was no drama, no major event. Just one morning she woke up and felt she no longer wanted to abandon herself for even one more day. She began with small things, turning off her phone after 900 p.m., writing down what she truly wanted and taking walks around her neighborhood. 3 months later, she realized she no longer depended on validation, no longer felt the need to prove anything, and no longer feared standing alone. People think my life changed when I switched jobs, she said, but my comeback began the moment I chose to stop betraying myself. That is how a comeback begins, not loudly, not dramatically, but through small decisions repeated each day until one day you realize you have become someone entirely different. If you need an image for this, think of a sleeping volcano. From the outside, everything is silent, still as stone. Beneath, magma is moving, heat is rising, geological layers are shifting. No one sees that process, but everyone sees the moment it erupts. Your life is the same. The quiet inner shifts, changes in belief, changes in reaction, changes in choices are the soul's magma movements. When full enough, they create an eruption that changes the entire trajectory of your life. Those who only see the result will call it luck, but you know it has been forming for a very long time. Science explains this clearly. Neuroscientists call it a tipping point, the explosion point of the nervous system. When you change many small habits each day, the brain begins creating new neural pathways. At first, you notice nothing because everything is happening silently. But eventually, when the new connections become strong enough, the brain reorganizes the entire network. And that is when you suddenly feel different, calmer, less reactive, less self-doubting, not magic, but because your brain has literally shifted into a new structure. This is a comeback in a biological sense. And then a strange moment arrives. You look back at things that once frightened you, confused you, or hurt you, and you realize they no longer hold the same power. Externally, your life may look unchanged, but internally you have crossed the invisible line between surviving and expanding. This is the moment you no longer wait for signs from the universe because you have become the sign. Machiavelli said the greatest comeback is not when you reclaim what you lost, but when you reclaim yourself. When you stop running from fear, when you stop wearing the mask of pleasantness, when you stop asking for permission to be yourself. This rising does not need witnesses. It only needs one moment of honesty with yourself. If you are feeling this strange vibration, the sense that you are standing before a door you cannot yet see clearly, know that you are not imagining it. You are at the tipping point of your comeback. You are not waiting for the miracle. You are the miracle. A person entering the greatest comeback of their life does not look like someone preparing to explode outwardly, but someone quietly refining their soul, like an artist sharpening their craft in silence. No showing off, no complaining, no telling others what is happening inside. Every experience, whether loss, fracture, or quiet awakening, becomes a layer of sediment building new strength beneath the surface, and those layers become the foundation for the awakening the world will eventually witness. If you've ever wondered, why did I see this video at the perfect time, the answer lies in the journey you just went through. From the awakening of the unconscious to the dissolution phase to the rising of the shadow to synchronicities lining up before you. Comeback does not arrive when you win something externally, but when you reclaim the inner territory once dominated by fear. That silent transformation is what makes you different, steadier, deeper, and no longer easily moved by the world. If this video made you feel supported, illuminated, or simply recognized, share it so that whoever needs it may find it at the right time. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking this comeback journey together, because your next chapter is waiting to unfold.